Good morning.
Good morning.
We've put the camera on a tripod, which means we can see ourselves on the computer, which is just to the left. It's a long ongoing process. So again, as I often say, if you see me doing this, it's not because there's somebody over there. It's because this is where the computer is. So if you're commenting, it's just going to be a little bit peculiar.
Again, any producers with a few minutes on their hands, please, drop us a line.
Yeah, the need is terrific. Oh, good morning, good morning, good morning. We're waiting for our guest to join us, Kjiesta Moch, our friend and spin instructor, Dr. Mary.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting. Kjiesta will be the third person to join us from spin.
Oh, she will.
Jody Anderson Roper, who was the original owner, and Rebecca Elliott, both people who we know from there. Let me just make sure that Kjiesta isn't trying to get in touch with me. Say some.
Oh, there she is.
Oh, excellent. Okay, let's just jump her right into the fray. Good morning, Kjiesta.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're good.
We're good too.
There we go. Oh, you're outside too. Jealous.
Yeah, we're in our sunroom.
Love that.
Yeah. Well, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So your voice and sound is a little bit off. So maybe people just let's try that. Say something now.
All right. How does that? Is that better or worse?
It's the same. Your mouth is moving. It's like you've been dubbed, Kjiesta.
Okay. Let me see here.
So let me give a little backstory while Kjiesta tries to figure this out. The other night I was watching the news and I looked up because I thought I heard a voice I recognized, and it was Kjiesta. And I missed the beginning of what she was talking about, but it became pretty clear pretty quickly that she was talking about some facet of really only showing the highlight reel on social media and how amazing her life was, because she's got this great husband and these two beautiful children. And it was...
She can cycle up a mountain.
Yes, she can cycle up and down a mountain simultaneously, seemingly. And it seems like everything was perfect in her life, except it wasn't. And so, Kjiesta, say something now.
Is that better or worse?
Oh, that's better. Yes. There it is. Okay, good.
Okay, so my headphones weren't actually connected before, so now that they're connected, it's working better.
Oh, that will do it. Yes. Let me just say, good morning, John Z. I'm looking out on our yard. John's a gardener. John, a lot of dandelions. It's disappointing. But
never mind a producer, John. Help.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another live stream. So let's get back to your story, Kjiesta. I just went and read your blog post this morning. In fact, let me put that up for people who want to also look into it. 2 years ago and 3 weeks ago, you were in a really dark place. So tell us about what was going on with you, that you were there, and what turned a corner for you.
Yeah, so I actually really struggled with postpartum depression and anxiety when my children were born, and they're now almost 5 and almost 6. That was a longer time ago. But I was recently talking about that with someone, and for me, that was the start of really understanding mental health and mental illness. I grew up in an Air Force family, so anxiety has always been a part of my story, because when you're in the Air Force, you get plucked out of your life and shoved in a different life very quickly without much notice. And I didn't ever realize how much that actually did affect me until I was an adult. Then I had children and really got into actually drinking very often. And it would be to the point where I would actually pump breast milk so I could have a drink. So my children could still eat, but I could have that drink to make sure I got to the end of the day so I could be there for my kids tomorrow. That started me on the journey of finding like Cycle Bar and finding a new church, and just really diving into who I was as a person and starting therapy and all those good things. And like you said, 2 years ago, COVID hit. I am extremely extroverted. I love being around people, with people. And that was very quickly taken away from us. Again, a very quick change
Yeah.
in my life is kind of a triggering pattern that I've noticed. And for me, that was it. I just got so out of my own comfort zone, didn't have anyone to have a coffee with, was just struggling to really get through every day, because tomorrow is going to be the same. It's going to be, we wake up, we do some work, we try to get through the day, and maybe one day we're going to be let out of our houses again. And so that really drew me up until actually to act on those thoughts of trying to commit suicide. And that, for me, I was like, oh, that can't happen. That wouldn't even happen to me. I think about it, but I would never act on those feelings. And then I did. And for me, it was scary. I was ashamed. I felt guilty. I literally for 2 years hid it away from the world.
All right. Well,
And the only people that really knew were some friends and my husband. So
okay.
And
Sorry, you cut out for a second. So I just want to make sure that we're back on the same page for everybody.
Mhm.
So you acted on your depressed, suicidal thoughts, and very, very few people in your life knew that you had made that attempt. That's where you are, right? Okay.
Mhm.
So I think we have known you maybe about 2 years, right? Is that
Mhm.
about how long we've known
Yeah.
you? So what's really fascinating is that even though your story isn't traditionally about addiction the same way that Maz's is, the tendency to hide, to keep it to yourself, to have thoughts which you think you're not going to act on, but perhaps you do, all of that sounds similar. Don't you agree?
I think it's the tragedy, and Kjiesta, for God's sake, jump in here if you've got something meaningful to say. It's the tragedy of that feeling of loneliness and not belonging that really wears you down. I mean, you could be surrounded by
Absolutely.
people and feel alone.
Yeah, that's true. You can be surrounded by people and still feel alone. So your blog post said that, you had Zoom parties and you were doing things online, but it wasn't the same for you. So, okay, you made an attempt. Clearly, it wasn't successful. And so
Yep.
that's fabulous.
Yes.
Congratulations on that. I mean, that's a weird way to say that, but we're glad you're here. I'm sure there are
Absolutely.
many, many people who are glad you're here, including you. Tell us what in the world prompted you to go from being highlight reel Kjiesta to real Kjiesta?
Oh, good question.
So, like I said, with my story, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, there's all those feelings, and they still are there. Like, even when someone says, oh, I saw you on the news, I'm like, like, is it a good I saw you on the news, or is it like you got triggered when you saw me on the news, or like there's still that feeling of not like being proud of my story, but I don't know. I felt that I had to share it. And the reason I waited so long, and I actually waited till May 1st, was because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And I felt like I needed that backing, which sounds so crazy as I say it out loud. I needed the backing of a national movement to tell my story in order to not feel so judged or attention seeking or any of those things that are really the things that stopped me from ever telling people. Because you can't see my thoughts. You can't see that sometimes, even though I'm smiling on the outside, I really just want to be at home alone and just sitting with my own thoughts to get through them. But right now I'm just trying to get through that. For me, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people in our lives we talk to on a daily basis, that we interact with, and they're smiling and they have those thoughts, and we need to get to the point where we ask the question, are you okay? You're kind of being short with me. I'm wondering if you're all right, versus taking offense to that and taking it on us, because that's how I was. I used to be brash and short, and my fuse was probably like this long. Someone would say one wrong word and I would blow up. That's just not being mentally healthy.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have known that earlier. I wish someone would have grabbed me and shaken me and said, hey, this isn't you, figure it out. But I'm glad we're getting in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said a number of things that just so resonated for me. I have often said that I really was concerned. I was not concerned about going public with our story. I was concerned that people were going to think I was trying to get attention by going public with our story, because everybody knows that I am an actor. Everybody knows that I want to be on camera and in front of audiences. And I did not want people to think that I felt like, oh, wow, Maz's addiction and our survival of it is an amazing opportunity for me to shoot to stardom. That felt like a really real consideration that we had to work through above and beyond the shame and stigma of it, which was substantial.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone I worked with knew about this because, they were there. The university didn't care because I kept my job. So I thought, well, if it's one of the adages of teaching, if you can reach one person, it's all worth it. So we did it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've not had anyone say to me, gosh, it's really handy that your husband became an alcoholic and you parlayed that into a pretend TV program. But I am aware of it and think that there is a fine line between doing it to get attention and doing it to offer hope and healing. And so I just want to say to you, Kjiesta, as someone who has worried about the same thing, there may be people who roll their eyes and think, oh, there's Kjiesta. Look at her getting all this attention. There may be people who think that. Let them think it, because somebody probably heard you and thought, wow, if she can do it, maybe I can too. And that's far, far more important than the people who want to judge you for maybe trying to get attention.
Absolutely. Actually, Matt alluded to it perfectly. I went to school to be a teacher. I was a teacher for 6 years. It's in my blood. If I can help someone, I want to help someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I taught 5th grade for 6 years. And even noticing some of those things with children and their mental health needs are, again, what just caused me to okay, pray on this for a few days. If it's still on your heart to share your story, do it, because that's what you are put on this earth to do. You lived through your story, so you could tell your story, and that's it. And like you said, I have to just tell it and let it go. At the end of the day, people can literally think what they want, but it's not going to stop me.
Right, because we know what silence does for people. Silence further increases the shame, the stigma, the isolation, the nobody else has ever experienced this. I mean, let me ask you this, because I have often marveled at the fact that I think both of us felt like we can't tell anyone what's going on at our house because nobody will understand it. Like nobody else had ever dealt with alcoholism in their lives. We were the only people on the planet who had any idea. Did you feel like you were the only person who had a seemingly perfect life when in actuality there was a lot of darkness and despair underneath it? Is that what kept you quiet, or why didn't you feel like you could reach out sooner?
I say it was a sum of all of those things, and it's my closest friends. Some of my closest friends knew almost within the first year, because I was like, well, if I just kind of go off the grid, I want you guys to let me know and check on me and just say, hey, how are you doing? And they literally do that to this day. I'm very active on Facebook and Instagram and all the things, just because I have a direct sales business. I do teach Cycle Bar. I have a lot going on. And I love to post about my kids because they're the cutest things ever. And as those posts go, as those posts keep going on, people are like, okay, she's still here. She's doing good. And then they stop, and people literally will text me like, what is going on? Are you okay? And that is a gift to me. And I thank God for that every single day. That's the support I've really kept close around me. And the other point, what you were saying, Dana, is having your husband's story and you're telling that. For me, it was different because it's my story and I'm telling it, but my husband was a very big part of it. My husband was the one who actually stopped me and saved me. And for me to tell my story, it's also kind of outing him too. And he was also hiding it too, because out of respect for me and
Yeah.
my feelings, because it isn't his story to share, but he is a very big part of it. So part of that 2 years as well was like him and I had to get comfortable saying the word suicide and not like feeling like our butterflies in our stomach or things like that happen, where I could get comfortable with my story. And recently I go to Prairie Heights, we attend Prairie Heights, and I was dunked, which is equivalent to like the believer baptism. That happened last October, in October 2021, where I was planning to have that done then. But you actually have to type out your story. And I was not able to type out my story in October with the truth, with the vulnerability that I needed to share. So I did not go through with it. That's why I waited till May, until I was actually able to type the words that I was meaning to say without having a reaction inside that I wasn't able to get through emotionally and mentally.
Wow.
Wow.
That's amazing. I love that you're telling your story, and it is so similar to ours. I say all the time, this is Maz's story, but I was a very active participant in the story. So it is my story. But at the end of the day, ultimately, Maz had to decide that he was comfortable with us going public with it because he had the most to lose. I felt shame as the spouse of an addict, but it is not the same as being an addict or being the one who was depressed. It is ultimately your story, and Jason is a player. It's your story, and I'm a player. And I think we get to own our piece of it, but it is not the same as being the lead of the story. I want to put a comment up from John Kjiesta so you can see this. I can attest that all of your messages, guests, and interviews have been amazingly enlightening, and they make a difference in many people's lives. I know they reach many people. You should all be proud of the messages being delivered.
Oh, thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you for that, John. And I think, Kjiesta, let me ask you this. Now, it's only been 4 days since you went really public with this, but has anybody written to you with criticism or a little bit of, wow, really? You wanted to go public with this? Or has the support been overwhelming?
Actually, not one person has reached out in a negative way to me, actually. So I've been very blessed with that. And I just pretend like they're not saying anything negative anyway. And that's great. If they want to say it to my face, I'd rather that than not, actually.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I actually was immediately kind of bombarded with messages on my Facebook Messenger about people who either said, thank you, this is my story too. I'm not ready to share it. Can we have a coffee so I can understand your feelings, because I'm feeling the same way and wondering how you got through them. Or I just needed you to say that so I didn't feel alone.
Yeah.
And for me, I keep showing, and then that's what I show Jason. I show him all of these messages and things because, again, he supports me, but to help him understand the why behind this, because like you said, it's been a very short amount of time where it's like, hey world, this is what's going on in a lot of different platforms. And for him to see that it's really doing good in the moment, it's helping him really just not really feel any shame on his side of things too.
I can say that is exactly what we experienced. I was overwhelmed at the amount of people who wrote to us, people I grew up with, people I knew from really peripheral places. Just shocked me at how many people wrote and said some version of, boy, this has happened in my life too.
Yeah.
In this way, in fact, it started to kind of be too much for me because we told our story slowly over 9 weeks. And but in the weeks where it was really at the bottom of our story, I really struggled emotionally. It was hard to go back to where we had been 3 years earlier. And it was hard to hear from all those people that they were feeling the same way, to know how many people felt that hopeless, dark despair was really, really
Yeah.
challenging for me and took me a long time to process, because it kind of it's like we ripped a Band-Aid off of what I thought I had worked through, and I realized I still had a lot of stuff to work through. So I wonder if Jason is feeling a little bit that way too. It's traumatic to watch someone you love go through something that difficult, suicide, addiction, whatever it is. It's really traumatic to be a participant in that, to know that you carry some of the weight of helping to bring them around. I mean, there's a lot of heaviness to being the partner that we don't really talk about. And I didn't realize how much I still needed to work through until people started to pour out to us where they were too. So I think it's important for you to be aware that it's an amazing thing to have people say, thank you for doing this. And it's a heavy responsibility to carry it too. We have some other things I want to put up. Patty Sen runs the new Soul Solutions.
Yes, Patty.
So thank you, Patty. And Kjiesta, my mother, our tried number one person. Without knowing, I would dare say that anyone that has some criticism of someone bearing their personal story is worried about something similar personally. I bet that's true almost all the time.
I was going to bring that up. It's tragically true, and that the most tragic thing about this is I actually do sound like my mother when I say this. My mother's answer to everything was oh, don't listen to them, they're jealous. And the older I've got, I think, damn it, she might be right.
I do think that there is a portion of people who are critical because they're not yet at a place where they can say,
or they're afraid,
boy, I'm here
it might
too.
happen to them too.
Yeah. That's the other thing. And I experienced this when my parents got divorced. So I've had this experience multiple times in my life, but often I think when somebody's life looks perfect, your life looks friggin' perfect, Kjiesta. You got these like Barbie doll children, you have this super cute little life, all these things look amazing. If your life isn't what you're showing and I don't feel perfect, then what hope do I have? And I think that it creates an anxiety I absolutely, my childhood life looked really good to people. And when that fell apart, people didn't know how to deal with it, because I think it caused them to think, boy, I have to now assess my own life. And if theirs isn't perfect, what does that say about me? And I think that there's a lot of that happens because we've gotten super comfortable with the highlight reel and feeling like everybody else's life is so much better than our own, when in actuality, everybody's got some garbage somewhere in their lives. They're either trying desperately to make sure nobody sees, or they're choosing to be honest about, and both bring consequences.
Absolutely. And that, and some of the people that have reached out are like, I hope one day I can tell my story because this and this and this has happened. A few of the messages I read, and I just had to mark them unread and come back to them because of what was said in them was so heavy. And I chose to look at them before I was like going to work, right? And I work at a chiropractic office where people come in very happy, and I typically have a lot of energy. And so having people come in the office, I knew that I needed to be my authentic self and just not deal with that that moment. And eventually I did respond and thank those people, because for them, that's a big step forward, telling someone they barely know or maybe know very well, but have been hiding it from me for a long time.
Yeah.
Has really helped that as well. And what you said about looking good on Facebook versus not looking good on Facebook, it's that shift of mindset where as people and humans, we need to stop caring what people think about how we look and just be our authentic selves. That is so much easier said than done.
Yeah.
Because you go to a party and you text your friends like, what are you wearing to this party? I don't know if I want to be over or underdressed. Wear what you want. Wear what you want. And that's, for me, is just something I'm also getting through. It's like the trauma of my childhood brings me back there quite often. And I'm like, okay, that's why you feel so judged when you wear this certain thing, or when you choose this certain thing over that. For instance, choosing to go out by myself with my girlfriends and staying home with my family. There was some judgment there because my mom really was home with us all of our lives. So then that was where the fear came from. So even my my actions compared to my past actions have been hard to work through for myself.
Yeah, you open up a really interesting can of worms when you choose to go public with something that a lot of people are afraid to be public about. And a lot of the worms are your own judgment of where you were, who you are. So this is from a long time ago, school classmate of mine, Michelle. I too think others are uncomfortable with our pain, grief, struggle, etc. So they criticize what they don't yet understand.
Well,
So Michelle has had her own really difficult heartbreaks, which I don't need to reveal on this show. But Michelle, I know that you are, you know of what you speak. So thank you for sharing that with us. And let me just say, thank you for being as honest about the things that you've struggled with too, because you've opened a pathway for people to, to deal with loss and grief in really, really extraordinary ways. So thanks for that. So Kjiesta, what do you want next from all of this? I mean, that's kind of a funny question, but what do you hope this does? I guess let's leave it at that.
I honestly just hope people start seeing this news story on my Facebook come up on their feed later on, and because Facebook stays around, and it's going to come up later, and my blog posts will come up every year or whatever. And as the time goes on, I want more people to see that just because what you post on Facebook looks perfect doesn't mean you have to be perfect, and you're allowed to have your feelings, even if you've been hiding them for a long time. They're still valid, they're still real, and they're still yours, and you own them. Share them with the world if you are ready, if that's something you feel comfortable doing. I just want people to see that what they saw in me and what was the reality was not true. And that if that is their story, to let the actual version of them come to light, because it's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a hard lesson. And it'll be interesting to see how the younger generation who has no touch point of life pre-social media, how they navigate that. They may they may do it way better than those of us who came to social media later in life did, because it won't feel like it has to be perfect, because that is their reality. They are living their lives socially. So maybe there will be a lot more honesty on social media, and maybe there won't be. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I've been wondering how to say this, and hopefully you just take it as a compliment or just something I wish for you. But when I started, well, my second AA meeting I went to, when I was still in treatment, they bussed us out to St. Olivet. I went to an all men's.
Not Saint, just Olivet.
Oh, Olivet, yes. It's a Lutheran church, yeah. So I walked into this room and there was a couple of hundred men in there, and two things happened to me simultaneously. One, I was kind of scared and worried, and then I was relieved because I didn't feel alone. I was in a room that had no judgment and everyone was in there for the same reason. I thought, my God, there are so many people with this disease that I have. It weirdly made me feel better. I hope something similar like that happens for you.
Yeah, that's lovely. I think I've said this a billion times, but the community that 12-step programs or other sobriety or sober curious programs create, I think is something we should be striving to have in everybody's life. We all need places to gather with people who are there for a specific challenge and understand the challenge, regardless what else is happening in your life. Everything else could be great, and you have depression. Those can exist together. And if you don't have a place where somebody else can look at you and say, I see you and I understand you and I accept you, as opposed to, but Kjiesta, you have healthy children and you have a happy marriage and you live in a house. I mean, like if people can only see you and try to help you by sort of shaming you out of depression or shaming you out of feeling inferior or imposter or however you are, you can't get better. You need somebody who says, you have all these amazing things in your life and you struggle with depression. Welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need more of that, because then we can feel free to be honest, because it feels safe.
You know, I got a couple of stories for you. Hopefully this will help. One of them, so the year before I ended up in hospital with my addiction, I went home on my own, and I hung out with one of my oldest and dearest
Oh, you
friends.
went to England?
I went
Yes.
to England.
Yeah.
And, you know, we just sat in a bar chatting. And when I met him, when we went 7 months after I was sober, we went out for a meal, and I said to him, look, I'm an alcoholic. And he just told me, he said, well, you look great. You look better than the last time I saw you. And he just grabbed hold of me. He goes, I've been suffering from depression for years, and I've never been able to tell anyone. And he just came out of the blue. And when I was talking to him later, he said, it's just nice to know that everyone you know isn't perfect. It makes you feel better, weirdly.
Mm-hmm.
But we text each other every now and then, and he brings it up a lot. He said, I just love the fact that I'm not the only one who's been suffering. It makes me feel better. And, you know, it was just that heartfelt, I'm not alone thing. It's weird that doesn't happen enough. And you need people to be brutally honest. Our sister-in-law, we were having a Zoom call. She's French, by the way. And Dana's brother was going, oh, Mazzy, you didn't look that bad when you were drinking. And she went, oh, where's Delval? He looks terrible. She goes, man, you look great now, but you look terrible. And you need, for me, that honesty kind of helped. So, oh, yeah. Dana's pointed it out too. I did look pretty rough, but, you can see an improvement. And I think that's easier for someone who physically looked bad. And I hope, you can get to the position where you can feel that way too, because it's all, you've got that turnover in your head. And I just, the only way I can explain it is my head is quieter. There's no yelling going on in there anymore. It just feels great to just almost to sit in silence, because I never had that for a long time. Mm. So I hope you reach that point too.
Absolutely. Well, and someone had recently asked, and so I posted my blog on May 1st, then I was on the news this past on Memorial Day, and then now this, and I was actually on a friend's podcast about a month and a half ago or something, close to that. And those are the little tiny steps that have, like I said, really in the last couple months, just blown this up. And just like you said, I want someone to, like, when I hear those stories, I feel better. I'm like, okay, wait. It is invisible. And that's the part about it. It's invisible. You don't see my thoughts. I don't wear a shirt that says I live with depression and anxiety on it. Like, maybe some days I wish I would, and some people would like treat you differently. I actually heard a story in a book about a church in England who way back when they would escort the family of a deceased person at a funeral in to and out of a different entrance than the rest of the people, in order for the parishioners of the church to treat them differently, because they were grieving. So since they entered a certain, I'll find where the book that I read this, I read 2 books recently, so it's in one of those 2. I'll find that and let you guys know so you can post it. And so I'm not totally pulling this out of nowhere. But that to me was like, I wonder why we as a society haven't gotten past that, gotten farther from that. Because I think that if everyone that struggled with alcoholism, that if they came in a certain door to target versus everybody else, we would treat them differently. Like, we would say, oh, there's alcohol over there. Let's go this way. Because we don't know your struggles. We don't know your boundaries. Where we walk around, and you as well. I've never known you as an alcoholic. I never got to see you that way. And so I didn't see the transition. I just know the person you are today and at Cycle Bar. And you don't wear a shirt that says I'm an alcoholic or I suffer from alcoholism and all those things. And nor should we have to. I've never treated you differently, and you've never treated me differently, and you still haven't. That isn't normal. that's not the norm in our country, which to me, one day I hope that's what this all does. I hope everyone just sharing out their most vulnerable moments lets everybody know it's okay to not be okay. Be curious over being judgmental, and you're not perfect either.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. If you want to, just, if you want to pull the toothpick out of someone else's eye, maybe check the log in your own. And, there are some great moments in the Bible, whether you ascribe to it or not, that are good reminders. Focus on yourself. You've got plenty to work on. Well, Kjiesta, let me just say, thanks for being brave.
Yes,
and
definitely.
Sharing your story. There's no way that won't make a difference because.
Oh, I think it will. I think it probably already has.
You really look like you've landed in this extraordinary pot of gold, and you have, and in the pot of gold is also depression and anxiety and judgment, self-judgment, all those things. And that is true for all of us. So thanks for peeling back those perfect layers and being willing to show some of the stuff that's hard, because that's the only part of us that actually really matters.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be on today.
Yeah,
No,
we
it's a
will.
delight. Thank you.
We'll see you at Spin sooner than later, I imagine.
Sounds perfect. Bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care,
Everybody
Kjiesta.
else,
Thank you.
we'll see you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.